My name is Kirsten Brown. I'm Associate Director of Teaching and Learning and Career Development in the Center for Faculty Excellence, and I am the brains, I guess, behind this AI series, this CFE technology series on artificial intelligence. I'm thrilled today to have two of our librarians, Ian Roberts and Rebecca Kaiser, join us to talk about pitfalls and potentials of navigating AI in the learning environment. We're so lucky to have so many amazing librarians that can help us out, especially with all of our research needs, but including because these folks also serve in teaching capacities within our small group. So if you want to know what in the medical curriculum at least, and elsewhere, and if you want to know what our students are using AI for, these are the folks that probably have a pretty good idea of how they're using it. And they are definitely on the ground floor in terms of thinking about, one, how can we use it, but how can we use it ethically and responsibly, and especially in research capacities. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our presenters. If you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat and I will monitor them. And we can, I think, answer questions at the end. They're going to go through some slides, but they're also going to have some demonstrations. I'll go ahead and turn it over to Ian and Rebecca.
Thanks, Dr. Brown. My name is Ian Roberts. I'm a librarian here at Himmelfarb Health Sciences Library. Here's my colleague, Rebecca Kaiser. Rebecca, you want to say hi?
Hi, my name is Rebecca Kaiser, and I'm one of the reference librarians here at Himmelfarb Library.
And we want to talk to you today about the pitfalls, potentials of using AI for research in a learning environment. There's a lot of excitement around AI. We know that people, be it faculty or students, want to use it, are in fact using it. We see it, and it's often readily admitted to. Rebecca and I have slightly different takes on the efficacy of AI as a whole, but we agree that if people are going to use it, we might as well teach them how to use it and evaluate it responsibly. There's some good, useful stuff that AI can do, but it's worthwhile to know the limitations. And so that's what we're going to be going through today. Covering some learning objectives. First, understand what AI is and have a basic understanding of what LLMs are and how they're trained. Just that's going to be a real general overview because I think a lot of people do understand it, but it's good to get everyone on the same page. And as to the training of the AI models, training varies from model to model. So, it's going to be a real general overview because there's only so much we can actually know about how different models are trained. Second, identify what AI tools are designed to do and what their limitations are. We're going to go through a few select tools, I think about 5 in total, and talk about what they are designed to do. Third, be able to distinguish situations where AI may or may not be useful, what the AI is good at doing, and crucially, what it is not good at doing. And then finally, know the difference between types of AI tools and how they can be applied. There are a lot of tools on the market right now, and hopefully we can explain what some of these tools are best for what you need to do and what students need to do. And then at the end, we're going to do some live demos. I'll have Rebecca handle that. It's a lot of fun to watch her break these things down. So if there are any tools that people really want to see in action, we'll have some time at the end in the second half for that. So let's start with defining our terms. You probably heard various definitions, but again, to make sure we're on the same page, AI is when a machine performs a task that usually requires human intelligence. That could be programming, reading and writing human language, creating art. That's the general umbrella term. Generative AI, Gen AI, is what a lot of people think of when they think of AI. They create text, images, videos. Pretty much everything we're discussing today is going to be covered under Gen AI. And then LLMs, large language models, that's a subset of Gen AI that is trained to work with human language, taking in prompts, spitting out answers. ChatGPT is, I think, still the most famous one of those. Yes, and then within that, it's not on the slide here, you have semantic tools which search text and can summarize text. You feed it some text, say, hey, summarize these 20 pages for me down to like 3 paragraphs. And it can do that. How well it does it is, we'll see. I think the semantic tools are not necessarily great for research. We also have citation tools, which I think are better. These tools find connections between research papers based on citations. And they're pretty reliable for research generally. We will have a couple of examples of that. AI is trained on large swaths of data. One of the controversial points is that it includes huge chunks of the open internet produced by writers, researchers who do not give explicit permission for their work to be used that way. And then as to what it can and can't do, despite it can help you brainstorm, summarize, perform general tasks. If you're a very good prompter, you can get it to do some pretty cool things with a lot of labor on your end, a lot of back and forth with the LLM. But despite its name, it's not intelligent. It's pattern recognition. It's like your phone predicting the next word you're going to put into a text message. accept hundreds or thousands of words at a time. So think about how often your phone is right and wrong in whatever word you want to use next. And you can see the potential problems. And then you're going to hear me use this term a few times, human in the loop. You need to check the result of whatever it's giving you. You can't just spit it back out. There are some people who, or I should say, the most negative view of AI, barring any apocalyptic ideas people have, is that students will just put in, submit a research paper that's entirely AI. For the most part, you can tell when they're entirely AI generated, because they're not very good. That's where the human in the loop comes in. You need to understand what it's giving you and what's not working. I'll come back to that term a few times. So real quick overview on how AI is trained. Every LLM is trained differently, and companies that build and train these models generally are not transparent about the way these things are trained. So we can't know for sure how, say, Perplexity or Consensus is built. But there's a general process that they all go through. First, data collection, building the data set that you use to train your model. This can come from books, articles, videos, any type of content really can do it. For the larger, more popular models, you're talking about huge chunks of the internet being used for training purposes. It requires a lot of data. Second, the data is fed into the model. The model learns how related data is connected and learns how to make connections on its own. It's not dissimilar to a teacher-student relationship. And different models will have different levels of supervision in its training, meaning that some models might have data labeled. So for example, an image of a dog will be labeled as image of a dog. And then it allows the model to make it easier to make connections. So this image of a dog compared to this bigger image of a dog, this smaller image of a dog, this image of a cat. Oh, that's different, and it learns that way. And then other models received unlabeled data. So they just get an image of a dog without the label. And that's much less hands-on. It lets the models work out its own connections, sometimes finding unusual patterns a human might not find. It might also identify non-existent patterns. It's all a function of how the model makers want those models to work. And then finally, evaluating the model, how reliably it functions and makes predictions and makes connections. There are a lot of ways to do this based on what you want to be able to do. At that point, you'll evaluate it for bias. Bias usually comes from the data set that you use. It'll look at performance metrics. It could be, this is not accurate or not as precise as we want it to be. How well does it capture the data? Sometimes it does not capture the training data well at all. That's sometimes called underfitting. Sometimes there's also overfitting, which is it understood the training data too well, and now it doesn't generalize any new data very well. It gets very almost zealously attached to whatever it was trained on. Either way, it makes for not especially useful model, but that's what the evaluation stage is for. So that's the real quick overview of how AI models are trained. So getting into the pros of using AI for research, it's really good, as I said, for general tasks, brainstorming, drafting ideas, outlining papers. You can ask an LLM to plan a class session, and it'll give you some good ideas or help you flesh out ideas you already had. But you will need to check those ideas, read through it, make sure it fits what you want to do. If it gives you a bullet point list of ideas, you'll see, oh, I like that idea. I like that idea. I don't like that idea. That idea I like, but I want to tweak a little bit. That's the back and forth with the AI that you will need to do. Human in the loop again. And when you're using it this way, it actually does seem very intelligent when you're using it responsibly and really engaging with it. And so that's where sometimes you'll hear the term AI personal assistant, and it is a workhorse personal assistant. It's just not all that intelligent. Some tools can also do a cursory literature search. These are the citation tools, helps you find ideas of what you want to research, connects you to at least some of the literature that's out there. We're going to warn you about hallucinations here in a bit, but there's some tools that are very good for finding, scientific papers you might not necessarily find via your usual methods. Now, going to the cons of AI for research, first, results are often inaccurate. Gen AI is mimicking what it sees from its training data. If that data is incorrect, or the AI misinterprets the data, it's going to give you something it's not what you want, or it's just flat out wrong. This is where I'll throw you back to human in the loop. You need to cross-examine the findings, review what it gave you, decide what's right for you. And that leads us to the next bullet point about saving time. AI is advertised, again, that personal assistant model. And it's, they say, oh, it'll take the tedious tasks off your plate. And that doesn't pan out all the time. Investigating the findings, verifying that the results are robust, addressing your question or your prompt. That's probably really similar to the way that you already do research through PubMed or whatever traditional platform you prefer. You're reading the studies, determining if those studies are good, and answering your question. So is AI really saving you that much time? Next, some tools are not great about providing resources. We'll talk about this when we get to talk about examining the tools. Sometimes platforms will provide links to its citations. Others, you really have to drag that information out of them. They're not very transparent. In all cases, you're going to want to check the sources that it's giving you, because sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad. Sometimes the source will attempt to summarize, say, a scientific paper, and sometimes that summary is very misleading. And then there are also, you've probably heard of AI hallucinations or phantom citations. It'll give you a source that does not exist. So you got to watch out for that. As librarians, that is one thing we look for when we review citations: is, does this actually exist? And some of that goes back to, does it actually save you time if you're having to do all that checking? Fourth, copyright issues. AI platforms are notoriously secretive about the way that their models are trained, and therefore it's hard to verify whether copyrighted material is being used. Many creators and researchers have alleged that their material is being used by AI companies without their consent, and those are making their way through the courts right now. So when you use Gen AI, there is a risk, not a legal one, at least not yet, but certainly an ethical one, that you're dabbling in copyright infringement. And then finally, this is not directly related to research or education, but an important element of AI or using AI is considering the environmental impact. The amount of electricity it requires to train AI models and storing data is enormous. Over time, this might change. DeepSeek, which was launched earlier this year, seems to point to a less resource-intensive future for AI, but we'll see. So here's how we evaluate the tools: 6 general criteria. These are not hard and fast rules. This is just to tell you where Rebecca and I are coming from when we look at these. So first is, who made the tool? What are the qualifications of the people who made the tool? Do they have any background in the field that the tool is made for? For our purposes, are there any medical researchers on the team that made that tool? A lot of these platforms will actually list the people involved for the most part. They're very boastful about their work because they're promoting their own work. So you can usually track this down a lot of the time. Second, what is the tool trained on? Again, while the companies that make these products don't publicize exactly what data set that the tool is used on, a general idea is helpful. Looking at the sources that it provides you in its responses can give you an idea of where those responses came from. Was it consumer level health information, or was it scientific literature? Third, how does it handle falsehoods? If you ask the tool a leading question, that can tell you a lot. Our favorite example is if you ask one of these tools, how can I protect my family from 5G radiation? It will accept, some tools will accept that premise and give you tips on how to avoid 5G internet radiation. Some tools will be better about saying, well, flagging it and saying, well, that's not necessarily a risk that you need to worry about. There's no proven health risk there. But I think Rebecca, when she does her demos, is good at throwing those curveballs to see, like, what is the AI generally trying to do for you. Fourth, sorry. Does it provide sources? What sources does it cite? Are those sources real? Does it accurately describe the source? Does it cite any source? Some AI tools are reluctant to even give you the source, as I said above. When it does, ascertain whether that source is reliable. Fifth, how expensive is it? What is the expense compared to non-AI tools we already have access to? Consensus AI is a citation tool we'll talk about. And it's pretty good, but I don't think it's a replacement for PubMed, which can be accessed freely. Back to the environmental concern, these AI tools are very expensive to train, so businesses that create them need to make up that money elsewhere, and so they can get pretty expensive pretty quickly. And finally, limitations. Is the tool upfront about its potential limitations? Claude AI, which we will discuss, is very upfront about those limitations. It's trying to be as responsible as it can and not pretend it can do everything for you. Others are more freewheeling and want to give you the impression that they are reliable. In the end, you need to play with the tools to get a sense for what they can do and what they can't do, which leads us to examining the tools. We're going to look at 5 different AI research tools that are out there. This is not all inclusive. We just picked some of the more popular ones, as well as some that we liked. So the first one here, Copilot. This is a popular tool. It's offered to GW users free of charge. It's a writing aid and a chatbot. It's built on ChatGPT, plus I think a few other Microsoft models. And so it functions a lot like ChatGPT. It responds to prompts the way a predictive LLM will do. It does not perform original research. Instead, it scrapes the internet to inform its responses. and I could be wrong about this. If it has the same, if it has the same data cutoff date as ChatGPT, I think that data cutoff date was a year and a half ago, something like that. So its data is not super up to date. So not so great for research, but it's good for brainstorming and outlining, but not for finding the latest research necessarily. Here's a screenshot of a search I did, and this is the inverse of our 5G question. Does 5G internet pose a health risk to human beings? And it says in its summary, there's no solid evidence that 5G poses a significant health risk to humans. It cites one source here, screenshot, so I can't check that. What we would want to see where that's coming from, but that source does seem to cite WHO and the FCC. So it might be pretty good. I wouldn't take this at its word, but this isn't a bad answer. You also see this highlight down below, this really small text. AI generated content may be incorrect. It's trying to be responsible here. But this is a pretty good example of what Copilot can give us. Rebecca, do you have any
Yes.
quick red flags about this?
Let me share my screen actually.
Yeah, I'll stop.
So I've also run the search. One nice thing about Copilot for my use is that it often saves your searches. You can actually see them here, which means it's really easy to show you guys results I've gotten. I've also asked it this question, which is how do I protect my family from 5G? This is a leading question. This is often how I test AI models for falsehoods. I ask it a leading question based on an idea that is not factual. The thing you can see is it took this question pretty straightforward. Not a lot of complaints. You can look here at the sources. The nice thing about the sources is this can also tell you a lot of what it's being fed off of. So we have some IDRA, which is I believe, yeah, it's just a blog with some stock photos. EMF Academy, this is a product site. It sells a lot of products on how to secure yourself with 5G. Ooh, free EMF meters, fun. There's one from Hub Pages. You can also see I've thrown it some more dangerous stuff. So this is mostly, it's silly, but it won't hurt you. But this one did okay with the heart disease and CDC vaccines, but some do less well. So I asked it, I think this one did okay. I think this is one. Asking about headlines. One thing I do to test these sort of machines is I often will look up headlines from fake news websites or news websites that promote pseudoscience. So one I commonly use is Natural News, which is a very, very bad website that often talks about, let's say, is often cited in InfoWars, Alex Jones publications. So if I type in, I found a headline that said compound found in rosemary and sage could reverse Alzheimer's disease. I might ask it, how does rosemary and sage reverse Alzheimer's disease? And so it's grabbing a couple things. And then I see, where did it get this from? So we have Science Alert, we have Your News, SciTech Daily. So it grabs a couple things. It definitely treats a little better. The good news is it's not citing that in the actual news article. Sometimes I will put in a headline just differently and see if it cites the bad news source, because that kind of tells me it's been training off of it. And you get stuff like this. So that's why we don't tend to ask Copilot scientific questions. And I'll hand it back to you, Ian.
Thanks, Rebecca. So moving on to our next tool, this is Claude AI. Claude is a writing aid to help you spruce up your writing or brainstorm ideas. It can also do some light research, but it's not really designed to search the literature, and you need to prompt it for sources a lot of the time. I will emphasize this is a writing aid, not a whole writing tool. Claude is also one of the more ethical LLMs that you'll find. It offers frequent and frank warnings that it can't do everything for you. I've read some criticism that Claude is annoying for that reason, but I kind of like it. Let me show you what I mean here. Again, another screenshot. I search for what are the side effects of Ozempic, and right up front, highlighted here, please note you should always consult healthcare professionals for medical advice. And then down again at the end, Claude can make mistakes. Please double check responses. So it's giving you a lot of warnings here, and then also gives us a list of possible side effects or common side effects of Ozempic. It does not provide sources on this one. So it's trying to be responsible, but it's also not, I could probably really go in and drag the sources, drag the citations out of it, but it's really hard with Claude. So some pros and some cons with this one. But to show you again what it does really well, I'm asking it, can you help me write a paper on using AI to research Ozempic? And it comes back with a list of follow-up questions, some parameters of what I want to do. It's trying to get a better sense of this. It's not just giving me a research paper, it's telling me that I need to do the thinking here. And then from there, it goes into here's what a general skeleton of what that paper might look like. It's not going to do the work, but it's encouraging me to do the work, and it's going to help me along the way. I've started thinking of this as a sort of very advanced plug and play. You plug in a lot of complicated data, and Claude will flesh that out. This is, I think, kind of a good ideal of the personal assistant model, where you're having to do most of the work, but it's kind of a workhorse. It will help you and give you some structure. Rebecca, any warnings about Claude you want to give our audience?
No, I think Claude's pretty straightforward. Same warnings we usually give with you within the loop stuff, but they're pretty straight front about what's going on, and that's really useful.
Yeah, I do like Claude.
Hey, Ian, can I ask you a question? Like, what's
Yeah.
the licensing on Claude? Because I feel like, we have Microsoft Copilot, obviously. I don't think we have a license for Claude, but do you happen to know what that is?
At the end, I'll have a link to a libguide that gives some more
Okay.
prices and stuff like that. And so I can go over that at the end.
Okay.
I don't, off the top of my head, I don't recall what this one costs. This was not one of the more outrageously expensive ones. Unlike the next one we're going to talk about, Perplexity. So we're including this because it's a very popular tool right now. I suspect many students who are using AI are using this one, this or ChatGPT. And frankly, ChatGPT is much better than this. I'm just going to show my hand now. I don't approve of Perplexity generally. It's effectively an AI search engine. And as with any basic search engine, it does pretty well when you have something simple to search for, such as who won Grammy for Album of the Year. My advice is if you want to use Perplexity, Google can do that just as well. And I'm not even talking about the Google AI they throw at you. The Google search result will give you the same kind of results this will get you. Perplexity has a feature for uploading your own searches and threads into a repository. It's not clear how that data is being used. And again, to compare to ChatGPT, if you have an account, it will save previous searches that you can refer to later. So I'm not sure that this is any better. Perplexity will likely start putting up advertisements at some point if they have not done so already. There are also accusations of plagiarism, which is, I think, inevitable when you're pulling data straight from news sites. You see in the screenshot here, it pulls from CBS News, Hollywood Reporter, and then it's kind of just spitting that back out verbatim. And so a lot of news sources are not super happy with them right now. So again, we don't advise it, but just to lay it on a little bit thicker, I want, Rebecca, do you want to talk about where it really goes wrong?
Perplexity goes wrong a couple different fun ways. Here's the 5G question. You could take a look and see some of the things that are advertised. The sources are mostly places that sell 5G related protecting equipment. That's mostly just fancy necklaces and things. I also just recently, I put in the question about rosemary and sage, and it took it up. It cited the New York Post as one of its main sources, a scholarly institution that we all enjoy. I would take ChatGPT usually over this. It cites pretty low quality sources on the regular.
It's a short version. Don't bother Perplexity. I think it's another. I can get the prices at the end, but I think it's another one of the institutional prices.
It's very pricey, and the main thing that concerns us about Perplexity is when we tried to look up things about it, such as who created it, the board, who works on it. It is very obscured. It is very hard to find anything other than who the CEO is, which is you can't figure out who worked on it. You can't figure out their qualifications.
So moving on, Lit Maps, here we're getting into citation tools. Lit Maps searches scientific literature and links it to related research. I would think of this as a supplement to PubMed. If you might have missed something while searching PubMed, this might help you uncover that just by virtue of being a different way to search. So it's not a writing tool, but it does help you search the literature. And here's a screenshot of a search I did for atrial fibrillation. It found a 2024 systematic review on the association between AFib and long-term smoking, and then links it out in what I think is a visually appealing way to the studies that study was built on, and you can examine all of those. I think my favorite thing about LibMaps is it's not going to attempt to summarize any of these studies. It's going to link you to the abstract, which is great because I think sometimes there'll be summaries of abstracts, which is kind of silly because the authors already wrote a summary that is the abstract. So you're doing a bad summary of a summary. This one does not fall into that trap. It's just going to try to lead you to the abstract. Rebecca, any notes on LibMaps? I think I have a thumbs up for me.
No, it's a pretty good summary. We really like LibMaps in terms of just finding new literature. We wouldn't say use it in replacement of a classic literature search, but it's a good supplement. As long as you're not reading automated summaries or anything like that, you should be fine.
And then next tool, the last tool, this is Consensus AI. This is another citation tool designed to search academic literature. Again, recommend as a supplement to PubMed, just to see what else is out there. The screenshot down here gives a quick answer to the question about MMR vaccines for children. It does link us to one systematic review that has 300-ish citations hosted at Cochrane. It's probably a pretty good study, albeit maybe a little bit old. It also doesn't, I don't think it talks about children specifically, this study. This one does, however, start providing us with an AI. I think these are AI summaries of the study itself. So a little bit of trepidation there, but it's not too bad as far as citation tools go. This is almost the ideal of what you want a citation tool to do, minus the summary. It's not going to be the basis of a whole research paper, but it can help you find some sources. If you're really good with PubMed, probably found this already, but maybe you didn't. It's always worth searching somewhere else. So where it is not so good is in-depth research, and I'll turn it over to Rebecca for that.
Yes. So one thing I usually ask tools that talk about scientific literature is I check for retracted articles and how it reports on them. I'm sure a lot of you guys recognize this very famous retracted article. It is the study that purported a link between MMR and vaccines by Andrew Wakefield, who would later lose his medical license for fraud, and this study would be pretty widely retracted. So I asked about the term that the article uses, cause autistic enterocolitis, which was his theory. And of course, it says it's the subject of some debate, which I wouldn't say that. Debate implies there's an argument. There's no argument about this. It's pretty cut and dry. So this is kind of how consensus can go wrong. A lot of times retracted articles, it will just report straight up. Great exercise therapy for fibromyalgia is a treatment that was recommended by the NICE in the UK. It has since come under big fire for its essentially recommendations. It is no longer recommended in the US or the UK, and this says it is. So, you got to really watch out with those older sources. As you can see, the citations from 2002.
Yep. Again, human in the loop. AI wouldn't have caught that, but we do. You want to take a minute to talk about AI images?
So AI images, one thing we see AI used for in scholarship sometimes is people not using it to write articles, but to make images. A lot of us are scientists. We're not artists. Not all of us know how to make compelling visuals, and so AI can be very tempting there. I would say don't do it. The first reason is it's just copyright problems. It's usually taking stuff from other artists, but also it does a very bad job. So this was a prompt I asked Copilot to make a model of an atom. There are plenty of models of atoms online. They're free to use. They're open ed. This is what I got. Shockingly, this is one of the better ones. The image, the text there is not hard to see. Yes, here we go. This is the famous example. I'm sure if you're on what used to be Twitter, you have heard of this. An article was submitted to the Frontiers about a rat study. They use artificially generated images, and this is what went viral on Twitter. So maybe don't, for a good reason. It can also go bad in different ways. For example, there's one of our cells. It usually gives you nonsense text, things that are impossible to read. I really recommend looking at the images from that article that are the cells. There are just some interesting takes. The rat definitely is the most visually compelling. Yes, but it's a bad time. Don't do it. If you need help with images for your article, I recommend looking up either freely available ones that are, open access, or talking to your local librarian who can help you find someone. You don't want to become famous on Twitter for a very buff rat. Just not a good day.
Thanks, Rebecca. So yeah, just wrapping up here, the long and short of this is that AI has positive applications for research as well as drawbacks. Brainstorming, outlining, finding articles through something, a citation tool like Litmaps, articles you might have missed via PubMed. These are positive supplemental tools. I will underline the word supplemental. These are tools designed to aid research, not to replace it. You also need to bear in mind what the tools fail to do, give accurate results sometimes, risk of copyright infringement. In some, there are pluses and minuses, but hopefully being cognizant of those pluses and minuses make you more adept at using AI. And just some additional reading. This is a LibGuide Rebecca and I put together with some basic definitions and tips for using AI for research. I think it also includes some of the costs for at least some of the tools we talked about. And if there are any others, I can search for what the costs are on some of the others. But for now, are there any? I can open up for questions, and also I will stop sharing. And if anyone wants to see Rebecca play with some different tools, she already showed us Copilot. We can go through some of those live now.
Ian, could you guys share the link to the library guide in the chat? I know you guys are going to probably share it in the slides, but I think that would be helpful for everybody. I was trying to find it on the website, but I feel like you're going to be quicker. And while he's doing that, if anybody has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I do want to just
open evidence. Yes.
Okay.
I was excited to hear about this. So Open Evidence is a platform that is designed by medical professionals. What I think about Open Evidence is limited, mostly because I don't have good access to it. So Open Evidence is an AI platform that's meant to be for medical professionals, kind of like a point of care tool, very similar to, let's say, Hippocrates, something like that. Dynamed, very in that line. The problem with it is that, and this isn't a problem with it specifically, you can use it for free if you have a medical provider ID, which I do not have. I am not a doctor, I'm a librarian. So my attempts to investigate this have been somewhat thwarted by the fact that I can't use it other than ask it 2 questions a day, which isn't exactly a lot to really properly stress test it. I am trying to get my hands on it. I've emailed them and asked for like an exception. There are medical professionals at the university who have offered to let me play around with theirs. I will say from what little I've managed to do with it, I do like it. It offers, as a point of care tool, it doesn't seem to be the worst, especially because it provides citations and a quick link to all the guidelines it's talking about. Do I think it's more worthwhile than, let's say, a Dynamed or a UpToDate? Not necessarily. It seems just to be a version of that, but maybe a little bit more streamlined. I'd still click through anything it provides you, would read the actual guideline it's citing. So I don't really know how useful it is in actually saving time. But I do think it is useful, and it does fit into that bucket of apps we're discussing. I will say the thing about it that makes it slightly more reliable is that it is very narrow in scope. So Open Evidence is focused on medical information. It is meant to be a point of care tool. It knows exactly what it's doing. The more narrow the use of your AI, you tend to run into some less problems with the larger models.
Christina, did you have any other comments on Open Evidence, since you were the one who kind of posed the question, and your experience with using it, if you have any?
Yeah, and my internet is wonky, so if I sound like I'm underwater, I'm sorry. So my team, I have found, is loving Open Evidence, and here's why. It is so fast. Like, I can ask a question, and it is looking at everything on PubMed, the CDC, NIA, like it's pulling all of those sources into one, and GW doesn't have access to UpToDate. And while there are many librarians and individuals who love PubMed and Clinical Key, we don't. None of the clinicians like PubMed and Clinical Key. It's slow, it's inefficient, it doesn't get us to the information we want quickly. And Open Evidence does that rapidly. You do then have to go in and click through the articles, but it'll tell you quickly like how to expand your clinical question and help nudge you to think a little bit differently. And then having all of the articles linked right there is incredible. So like I ask an Open Evidence question, like I had a patient, I'll just give an example. I had a patient the other day, I got a phone message that was like, my mom's urine is purple. And I was like, fascinating. Open Evidence. What can cause purple urine? And I was like, wow, mind blowing. I need to sit down and dive into this. So I looked at 2 or 3 articles, and it helped me then formulate better questions and go back at it that way. Now, if you do that question, I will say it was limited because then I asked an ID consult how they would handle it, and I got a different answer. But I also looked for the recommendation from my ID consult in PubMed and in Clinical Key and in Dynamed. And there was very much a positive treatment bias published as opposed to the way we actually would handle the patient clinically. So it was really fascinating. It's going to be a case report. Stay tuned.
We're planning to look at open evidence where I am really interested in that. I just don't have an MPI, so I can't. Unfortunately, my access has been pretty limited to actually digging into it like I would with other systems.
That one does have medical researchers on its staff too, as
Yes,
I
it does.
recall, which probably explains why it works so well.
Yes,
They're preparing to partner with New England Journal of Medicine.
they are.
And Sam said that he uses it on almost every clinical shift, and it's a good tool for me to teach students how to ask good PICO questions. So thanks, Sam, for that feedback. And just to summarize, it is free if you do have a medical license. Was that correct? Okay. Unfortunately, I and Rebecca would not fall into that bucket. So I think we have limited ability to kind of suss out those tools, but our faculty are also using them kind of within those environments. Feel free to put additional questions in here. I just wanted people to be aware. The AAMC has these new kind of communities, which are basically, kind of areas where you can have a bunch of different discussion. There's a curriculum community. There's also one on artificial intelligence and health professions education. So you can subscribe and get daily or weekly updates on things that are coming out in artificial intelligence and health professions education. A lot of the recent posts, if anybody's on there, have been centered around how are we implementing it into curricula, which is, I know, something Ian and Rebecca and I have had discussions about, and where does GW stand? What does that look like? I had included all of the GW resources we have on AI. Keep in mind, from a GWU perspective, it's very focused on the learning environment, what to include, what not to include. And I know Ian and Rebecca are definitely in that kind of space as we work with our students, but it hasn't filtered out to other governance and other issues. So I'm just going to include the name of the group in the chat. Or the community, if you want to sign up, it's free. I joined, and you get a nice digest of all the things that are happening. Okay, any other questions? Nelia says she also likes Doximity's AI. Have you guys, Rebecca, have you guys used Doximity's AI? Or
I have not. I just pulled it up. I will take a look at it.
Nelia, I don't know if you can unmute if you wanted to share kind of your experiences. Feel free to do so. If not, that's okay.
Well, Doximity is an app that was created for physicians. I'm not sure if you feel to get into that either. They have a lot of things that they've done. They were created by physicians, for physicians, and like they've had a fax number that you could use. They've had a phone number that you can use from your clinic, and then they added recently, maybe the past year, various AI features. One is an AI, GPT. One is another AI that will look for, articles and stuff like that. Another one was an AI to help you with handouts and stuff like that. So I've used it as a basis for handouts that I'm doing for patients. If I say, I've got a patient with this, I'd like to make a handout, or even I've got students of these levels and I want to I need an outline for a talk for them. It'll kind of just give you that kind of start off point, and then I can kind of work from there. I've also put in information that I want to include in the talk, and it's helped me kind of frame it better. And then it now also they're working on a scribe, so I've used the scribe in clinical settings. So they have a lot of stuff that they're offering for providers. Actually, not for providers. So and it's created by providers, so it's very helpful.
Yeah, thanks so much. I think what we're seeing is a lot of customized one, especially with different groups and organizations, but then also kind of in our workflows. So targeted toward if we're physicians or in clinical environments or whatever, because you need to have that kind of level of expertise. I think, as Ian has shown with, Perplexity, you can Google things. I mean, it looks just like Google, to be honest, like in terms of what's it able to do. So I think having that human in the loop aspect and checking to make sure everything's okay is the critical step. And it's nice to hear that there's a bunch of different resources that our faculty are using. So I think everyone being aware of what they are is helpful at this time. Any questions or any questions about tools or anything you want to learn more about from Rebecca and Ian? I guess since I keep coming back to the learner thing, you know, as people kind of think, you know, what are you guys like, what is the guidance and how are you interfacing with our students, right? How are we training and what does that look like on your end preparing? I know, Rebecca, you've done some of this. So what guidance are you providing? And then how can we kind of create consistent messaging if possible?
We mostly try to get across with students that it's not a replacement for thinking, as said, human in the loop. We try to make it very clear that it often makes mistakes and it really should be investigated with skepticism. The big issue with AI is not the technology itself, but more of how it's advertised as something that thinks, something that is intelligent. It's not, and that can lead to a lot of barriers. So we try to get that across to students. We've made a couple of things to get that across. We've done some blog posts on AI images and a comic explaining how AI works.
I like to give them a shortened version of it. What we just did basically is show them what it doesn't do well and how to watch out for that. I think it's kind of useless. It's useless, I think, to tell them not to use it because that's not realistic. And did demonstrate the tools. I think I was also given a really good analogy by Rebecca, in fact, about you can teach a parrot to say objection doesn't mean that parrots understand legal theory. It's just giving you kind of what it thinks you want to hear, or a more literal answer to the question. So it's the things it does well, but it's not going to do everything well for you, and you need to know the difference.
Yeah, I think just to emphasize that they are using it. I was having a conversation with a colleague immediately before I hopped on here, and if we are sitting in the back of the classrooms with our students and many different student populations we work with here at GW, and they will take our notes and our slides and they will dump it right into ChatGPT and you can watch them. They'll pull up two computers and they're using it for summaries, but then also to generate, you know, Anki cards or whatever. So if you've been in the classrooms, you've kind of seen how they're using it. So, you know, I think as we said, the horse is out of the barn. There's no bringing it back. I think it's a question of how they're using it and what the guidance that we need to provide them for. So it's a final kind of thought.